If your body is getting uncomfortable and worn out before your battery wears out, then it's time to make some adjustments to your bike. This is the 24-inch version of the Bolton e-bike's Blackbird, and there's a few things we can do to this specific bike to make it more comfortable to ride. Most of the tips that I'm going to show you right now are going to apply to just about any. It is really bright out here. Now hopefully I can see a little bit better. I think this hat should be appropriate for the Blackbird bike. Looking at any bicycle, I would say that you have three main pressure points. Basically 3 points where you're making contact with the bike. You have the handlebars, of course, for your hands, you have the pedals for your feet, and you have the saddle for your seat. Now, between those 3 points, as we move those 3 different things around, that's going to change how much pressure is on your wrists, how much pressure is on your seat, how much pressure is on your feet. And if we adjust those things just right, you should be able to ride this bike all day long without any discomfort. I want to start by talking about the saddle because I feel like that's the #1 thing people want to change. But I'm not going to actually change the saddle. Often I feel like people put a bigger, comfier saddle. It's kind of like putting a Band-Aid on the problem. There could be something different they could do that would make the bike comfortable that has nothing to do with changing to a big padded saddle. I'm not saying that doesn't work, but that's not what we're gonna do in this video. There are 3 main adjustments that you can make, and I'm gonna cover the first 2. We're gonna come back to the third one. The first one obviously is the seat height, and I think that's the easiest one to adjust. If the seat is too low, then your knees are gonna be bent up and cramped when you're riding the bike. And obviously if it's too high, then you can't properly use the pedals and get any power, especially at the bottom of the pedal stroke. I don't think I see anybody moving the seat too high, but I do often see people putting it too low. I know one of the temptations or reasons for putting the seat lower is so you can swing the leg over and get on the bike easier. And that's one of the reasons I put the seat dropper on the Blackbird, so you can have the seat down low to swing your leg over, and once you're on the bike, you can press the lever and then lift it up to an appropriate height. Here's a really simple trick to get in the right ballpark for your seat height. If you have a bike stand that can hold the bike upright, you can use that. Otherwise, you can lean the bike up against a wall. I just have the right side handlebar up against the wall here. But what you want to do is basically put your heel on the pedal and then lift the seat up until your leg is totally straight. So right here, my leg is not straight at all. So let's lift up this seat a little bit and try that again. Oh, so right there, I can actually straighten my leg out completely. Now again, my heel is what is on the pedal, not the center or the ball of my foot, which is where you would typically be pedaling from. There's arguments and different debates on where you should be actually positioning your foot. That's for another video. But let's go ahead and then now put our foot a little further forward where I would be pedaling and do some pedaling motion. Now you can see when I come down to the bottom of the stroke, I just have a slight bend to my knee here. And that's what we want, is just a slight bend that makes for a comfortable riding position. It's gonna be easy on your knees, because if you're too low, let's move this back down. See, if you're too low, your knees have to come up really high, bend really far, really sharp angle here, and over time, that is not going to be a comfortable riding position. Now that I have the seat at the right height, we need to talk about the tilt. On most saddles or on most seat post designs, there's gonna be a single bolt underneath here. And you can see, if you look real closely, there's some splines right here on this curved surface. So if you loosen this bolt up on the bottom, you can tilt the saddle backwards or forwards. So if you have the saddle at the right height, it's really easy to get this dialed in. If you feel like it's too hard at the back of the saddle and there's no pressure at the front, then you're gonna wanna tilt it back slightly. And of course, if you feel the opposite, too much pressure at the front and none at the back, then you're going to tilt it forward until you find a happy medium. The final adjustment is to actually slide the seat forward or backwards on the rails here, but I would consider this more of a fine-tuning adjustment. It's better if you get everything else on the bike lined up first and come back to this adjustment. Now that I have the saddle height correct, I have the tilt correct, it's time to get the bars where we want them. And what you really want to pay attention to is the pressure on your wrists. The main thing you can change on a bike to dramatically change how much pressure is on your hands versus on the saddle is the stem. Now, traditionally what would be done is to buy a new or different stem. You might go to a bike shop and have your bike actually fitted, in which case they could swap out different sizes. But that's one of the reasons I put on the adjustable stem on the Blackbird, so you don't have to do that. You have quite a bit of flexibility in how far down this can go, how far up it can go. And keep in mind that there's two movements going on with this type of stem. When you tilt it up, it's not only raising the bars up higher, but it's also bringing them closer to you and shortening the reach being the distance between the saddle and your handlebars. If you go for a medium ride, maybe it's 15, 20 miles, and after some distance, you start feeling some pain in your wrists or possibly some tingling in your fingers or any sort of numbness, that means that there is too much pressure on your hands. You're putting too much weight on your wrists and not enough weight on the saddle. So what you want to do is get the bars a little bit closer to you. So for the adjustable stem, you'd loosen this bolt right here and tilt the bars back, bring them a little bit closer so you're not having to lean over so far. It's also important when you tilt this back to make sure that you compensate by either twisting your handlebars forward or adjusting everything on your bars. A good example is the brake lever. If we view this from the side here, if I have the brake turned up too high, I'm gonna feel like I'm having to twist my hand this direction to get to where I can pull the brake, and it's gonna be painful on my wrists over time. So make sure that the brakes are in a nice, comfortable, relaxed position where it's easy to pull without having to strain either reaching up or down to get to them. And that same thing can apply to everything on an e-bike: the throttle, the buttons, the shifter. You want to get all of those adjusted to where your hands feel like they're in a natural, comfortable position. Of course, if you want to change the bars even more than that, there are swept back bars, there's H bars, Jones bars, there's hundreds of different types of handlebars on the market, but that could be a whole video all on itself. And we're trying to work with making your bike comfortable the way it's already set up out of the box with very simple and easy changes. Once you have the handlebars in the right ballpark, it's time to come back to that fore and aft adjustment on the saddle I mentioned earlier, because this small adjustment actually helps reduce the pain, if any, on your wrists. The best example I heard on how to get your bike dialed in as far as the fore-aft adjustment and how the pressure should feel on your wrists. Imagine that instead of handlebars, you have 88 piano keys right here. You should be able to easily lift your hands off the bars and play the piano, which is of course why I've been playing the piano in the background of this entire video. Now you might think that by moving the saddle forward closer to the handlebars, you are going to decrease the reach and you're going to make the bike a little more upright and you're going to decrease your pressure on your wrists. But that's not actually true. You see, we have a triangle going on here between the handlebars, my feet, and the saddle. And if we change any one of these three positions, it affects the other. There is a fair amount of pressure on your feet. So when you bring the saddle forward, if you can imagine your hips are moving forward, so you're putting your feet further behind you and you're putting more pressure on your handlebars. So to test this or feel this, if you have the bike sitting upright against the wall or something like this, make sure it's sitting on a level surface. Just try that. Sit on the bike, hold the brakes, and scoot yourself backwards or forwards and feel the pressure difference as you shift around on the bike. What I would suggest to get this completely dialed in as far as the fore-aft adjustment on the saddle is start with it moved all the way in the back position. Now, when you first get on, you're probably gonna feel like you're reaching too far forward to get to the handlebars. But go for a ride, 5-10 minutes, and scoot it forward by like 1 notch every few minutes or so until it gets more and more comfortable. And at the point where you start to feel more pressure on your wrists, you know you've gone too far. Again, this is one of those fine-tuning adjustments that's going to take some time, so you might have to go for a 10, 15, 20-minute ride to get this dialed in perfectly. Now that you have the seat at the right height, you have the tilt correct, you have the fore-aft position correct, you have the handlebars right where you want them, there's one last thing you can change on your bike very easily. Doesn't cost anything, you don't have to replace any parts. And that is the tires. You can adjust your tire pressure to meet your level of comfort. Now, generally speaking, the wider a tire is, the lower the pressure is going to be, the higher the volume is. In other words, the fatter the tire is, the softer it's going to be, the more comfortable it is going to be. When I used to do a lot of road biking, at one point I started to have some pressure in my hands. I tried cycling gloves, I tried the positions of the bike. It just wasn't quite perfect. And for me, the final key to make it comfortable on a long 30, 40, 50 mile ride was the tire pressure. By reducing my front tire pressure by just a few PSI, I was finally able to get the level of comfort that I wanted. I guarantee if you haven't done these simple steps, you are missing out and your bike is not as comfortable as you think it is. Now that your bike is more comfortable and you know you can go for longer rides, the next thing to do is make sure that you're maintaining your battery properly so it can keep up with you. Here's a video that simply explains the best practices for your lithium battery on your electric bike.